We've got some crucial information about ongoing efforts to eliminate suppressors from the NFA nationwide. A once-in-a-lifetime chance to deliver a significant blow to the NFA has emerged. But rumors suggest that perhaps a firearms manufacturer has been working against our interests and the Second Amendment. This situation has caused the HPA to be drastically altered. We need to discuss these developments and consider what happens with this vital legislation moving forward. Before diving into this presentation, I don't have any sponsor for this content. My only request for you viewers on this particular video is to follow the channel. That would be incredible. Hit the notification bell and also distribute this video because this is an extremely important message. We must create awareness about this particular legislation since this represents a generational opportunity that's currently underway to finally make suppressors obtainable for everyone across the country. We need the complete backing of the community behind this initiative. As I mentioned in the introduction, in this presentation we have some extremely vital information regarding the current campaign to pass the Hearing Protection Act, commonly referred to as the HPA. The objective of this is to extract suppressors from the NFA. You know, the Hearing Protection Act, which is also identified as H.R. 404. Many of you understand this legislation essentially aims to remove suppressors from the NFA, eradicate the unconstitutional registry of these devices, deregulate the production of these suppressors, and it would fundamentally have downstream consequences and make suppressors available to be acquired and held by individuals, even in gun-restrictive states like California, Illinois, New York, and others. The Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act were positioned in the House Ways and Means Committee, and they needed to progress through that committee to reach a House vote. We were anticipating that development, but then we received information I discussed in the previous video about how it was delayed in the House Ways and Means Committee, and rumors were circulating that certain rhinos within that committee were planning to modify the legislation. There was also conjecture that a firearms company was actively advocating against us, the firearms community, to alter that bill and to change much of the language in the Hearing Protection Act. And effectively, that's precisely what transpired. What we witnessed develop in the House Ways and Means Committee is that they revised the HPA considerably. They eviscerated it. Several rhinos in the committee gutted that legislation, and basically they transformed it to where it decreases the NFA tax burden from $200 to $0. So they eliminated the entire tax on it. And essentially they assumed we would all be pleased with that. But the major problem with that modification is it eliminated the original legislation, yet it maintains the actual registration of these items. It preserves the registry. It retains many of the manufacturer restrictions on this. It doesn't erase the registry. It doesn't extract suppressors from the NFA. All it accomplishes is reducing the tax burden. Rhinos in the committee attempted to present that as a significant victory, but the reality is they eviscerated the bill, and essentially they're keeping them on the NFA registry. They're maintaining all the self-manufacturer tax requirements as well, and it does nothing to eliminate the unconstitutional limitations and obstacles and primarily affects many of us like myself in California. We recognize we're in an anti-gun state where the government is actively limiting access to NFA items. And so the way they altered this legislation by only decreasing the tax but maintaining them on the NFA and preserving the registry, effectively, it excluded us completely from the Hearing Protection Act. Anti-gun states like California, New York, Illinois, and others will continue to function in the same manner because you had rhinos in this committee decide that they wanted to alter the legislation. Now, even worse, amid all of this, there are some accounts emerging that there was an active lobbying campaign by a purportedly pro-gun company, essentially a firearms business. Some reports are surfacing that allegedly Silencer Central was operating behind the scenes to sway members on the committee to modify the Hearing Protection Act to the version that we received. Again, at this juncture, this is all alleged, but if accurate, that is absolutely shameful. If a company is actively lobbying against the Second Amendment, particularly a firearms company, and they're doing that to safeguard their business model, that places them in the identical category and just as detrimental as any anti-gunners. Essentially, they're not part of our community. They do not genuinely support the Second Amendment. They only endorse it when it actually fills their accounts with money. Now again, I cannot verify 100% that the speculated company Silencer Central, that all of that is accurate. There have been declarations that have emerged afterward. Recently, Silencer Central CEO Brandon Maddox stated in response to the allegations that we have always been vocal supporters of the HPA as well as the current proposed provision of the zero tax stamp. Our priority has always been advocating for deregulation and Second Amendment rights. So again, that's quite interesting. Now also, just a couple hours ago in response to some videos that were appearing from colleagues like Jared from Guns and Gadgets, they also, Silencer Central, responded by publishing on social media and all of their accounts, and they stated this. Silencer Central has consistently and publicly stated our strong support for enactment of the Hearing Protection Act. Additionally, we strongly support any viable legislative proposals which would enhance or expand the ability of our customers to exercise their constitutional right to purchase, possess, and legally use suppressors. We are not lobbying against the HPA. So Silencer Central has declared in response to the allegations that they have not lobbied against the HPA. However, I do find it curious that even in those statements that they issued, they indicate that they support viable legislative proposals. To me, that sounds like attorney language and suggests there may be an internal belief within the organization that they think the original HPA in the wording was excessive and would not have succeeded. So they endorsed the kind of weakened zero-tax version that was passed through the committee, and perhaps they did believe that the version of the HPA would impact their operations, and so they advocated for the HPA, but only in this form. And if they did that again, that's repulsive, and they are not pro-Second Amendment. Now, also in support of the accusation, there are some lobbying documents that are circulating concerning Silencer Central and the HPA. Those lobbying reports demonstrate that recently Silencer Central was investing about $50,000 and $5,000 multiple times on the matter of suppressors. Some of those explicitly refer to the HPA. For example, one lobbying receipt reveals that on April 15th, they spent $50,000 to develop and support suppressor tax stamp conservation legislation. On April 12th, they spent $5,000 for regulation of suppressor purchases. And that memo also discusses the Hearing Protection Act. So again, some type of effort, some type of lobbying effort directly connected to the HPA. Then there was another lobbying report of $50,000 to support the protection of firearms noise reduction commerce. So it's mentioning the protection of suppressor commerce. Now we don't know exactly what the purpose of those efforts were, but some of those appear very suspicious and may indicate Silencer Central, in fact, lobbying against the full deregulation of suppressors. But again, I do want to mention that Silencer Central is saying publicly that they were not lobbying against the HPA, and they're claiming the allegations against them are false. Time will reveal if that's accurate or not. The firearms community will discover whether or not Silencer Central was involved in lobbying and changing the HPA. And if they're deceiving us expressly or gaslighting us, that's not going to benefit them. And we will uncover whether or not they were involved or not. Now the question becomes, what happens from this point? Well, we still have an opportunity to obtain the original HPA in the short act versions that we desired. The HPA will now basically proceed to the Rules Committee in the House, where it will then very likely succeed. I have no doubt that it's going to pass there, and then it's going to advance to a full House vote. It only requires a simple majority because of the reconciliation, and then that will succeed as well. And then the Senate Ways and Means Committee will receive this probably within a week or 2 weeks. It will be in their possession. And then the word is that there is enough pressure to where perhaps the Senate and the members within the Senate, they've heard all the commotion that we've created about the HPA and the Short Act, that they may implement the original versions of those bills. Now I understand there's a lot of people that are saying this will never succeed. Anytime I discuss the Hearing Protection Act, the Short Act, or any of these NFA bills, people say it's never going to pass. But remember, this is attached to the one big, beautiful bill introduced by Trump. And because of that, it can succeed by a simple majority because of a budgetary reconciliation and all that. And it proceeds through reconciliation. And we just need a simple majority of the vote in the House and the Senate, which is very achievable. And in my assessment, this is one of the finest opportunities we've had in a really long time to eliminate all the NFA restrictions that we are currently encountering. The HPA and the Short Act in their original versions could accomplish this. And we have sufficient momentum behind this where those original versions of those bills should have been approved through the committee. They shouldn't have been altered. Rhinos and potentially gun companies should not have gotten involved. They should have progressed in their original version, and they should get approved and reach Trump's desk. And all indications are, if this gets in front of Trump with the whole new 2A task force and his commitments to the 2A community, that whatever versions reach his desk, he will likely sign into law. So now it's on us. We need a unified front, a united campaign to contact our representatives, no matter where you reside, and inform them that you want the HPA and the Short Act versions that were originally presented. You want the removal of those items from the NFA. You want all those NFA restrictions to be eliminated. And you do not endorse the Rhino weakened version of the HPA. The reconciliation process will progress very rapidly, and your members of Congress need to hear from you. So you need to determine who your representatives are. If you don't know that, I will provide a link down below in the description section in the pinned comment where you can enter your address and discover who your representative is. And then you can phone them using this number, 202-253-6250. That is the U.S. Capitol switchboard. And then you just request your representative. Tell them that you as a firearms owner support the Second Amendment. They need to support the Second Amendment. And they need to support the complete removal of suppressors and SBRs from the NFA. And to any business or individual that obstructs our path, you will be expelled from the community. So I truly hope that the reports are not accurate that you have a company potentially like Silencer Central that is actively engaging in lobbying against our interests. Again, any business or any individual that interferes with this effort or tries to compromise on this will be expelled from the community. So as we acquire more information as this unfolds, I will inform you all. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, this nation was established by scholars, and this nation will be preserved by scholars.